Hi and welcome to Simply Balling's 2024-2025 season previews. It's that time of the year where for the next 30 days I'll be releasing a season preview for each team. In each preview there will be a quick season and off-season recap. Then following that we'll be looking at what's in store for each team. We'll be looking at some of the key questions that they have, some of the positives, some of the negatives. It will be digging deeper in some of those areas. And at the end there are some final thoughts with prediction of the standings, their floor, their ceiling, some of the playoff chances and some other fun predictions.
So today we're going for the New York Knicks, and this year they won 50 games. This is the first time since 2013 that they've seen this kind of success in both regular season and the playoffs. And it still kind of feels like an unfortunate season for them because they never got the opportunity to reach their full potential. Every time they did something that showed you that they could do something in the playoffs, something hit them from behind and just put that to rest. Julius Randle only played 46 games and missed the entire playoffs. They traded both RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly for OG Anunoby. That immediately looked great. And then he played 14 games and then had to miss 18 straight. Before coming back for 3 more games, he then missed 9 more. He played in the playoffs in the first round, but then he had to miss 4 games in the second round. If that wasn't bad enough, we also had Jalen Brunson get hurt in the playoffs. That couldn't see him finish the series fully healthy. They did manage to push the Indiana Pacers to 7 games despite missing Randle, Anunoby and having a limited Brunson, but they weren't able to reach the conference finals, thus making this a bit of an unfortunate season because you couldn't see them at full strength. And their off-season was pretty busy. They made sure to just go all out when it comes to the off-season. It started off with potentially overpaying for Mikal Bridges. It looked like they were set on getting the guy, and they finally got him. The package did end up being quite hefty, where it was Bojan Bogdanovic, Diakate Milton, unprotected first in 2025, 27, 29, and 31, an unprotected swap in 2028, a top 4 protected pick in 2015 from the Bucks, and that was just a whole package for just Mikal Bridges, who was not even an all-star, which we'll get to that later. They did lose out on Isaiah Hartenstein, which is a pretty significant loss to me. That loss did have me look at the season cautiously, and it had raised a lot of questions for me, especially with the Mitch Robinson news and his health. Then just recently they also made another huge trade, which was traded for Karl Anthony Towns. That came kind of unexpected, but he was linked to them for quite some time, and they finally got their guy again. That changes everything again for the Knicks. It raises more questions. It gives them a very different dynamic with the star players. So now they traded Randle, Dante, and all the package for Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, who are both all-star caliber players. Towns is an All-NBA talent, and now we've seen a whole different Knicks team. So what's in store for the Knicks this year? It's trading for Towns, seeing how all of it is going to look like. How much losing Hartenstein is going to hurt them on both ends of the floor. Can they survive with Towns as the sole big? How they look to use Bridges, Anunoby staying healthy and having that kind of the kind of impact that he had. Brunson having a lot on his back offensively, especially when it comes to just self-creation. How will their offensive rebounding look now, and will their defense be good enough? Because there are a lot of questions, particularly on the defensive end, and that was before even trading for Towns. That goes back to the loss of Hartenstein, and all of it just makes this season full of questions. So let's start with the obvious one. It's trading for Cat. That's going to be the biggest thing for them because he affects how they play on both ends of the floor. He affects how they look with Brunson. It affects how they look without him. So there's going to be a lot of question marks and a lot of talking points about Cat working out on both ends right now. And I'm conflicted with this because I was pro trading Randle, and that was a thing I would have wanted the Knicks to do. I think in a vacuum, especially offensively with what Cat brings, swapping out Randle for Towns is an upgrade fit-wise. He does provide so much more that makes the fit better with Brunson and everyone else because of his off-ball shooting, because of his better finishing as well, and his passing. So there are ways that this could make the offense fit so much better. That's why I can see the benefit of having Towns over Randle. He gives Brunson a very different type of teammate. He never had a pop threat like Cat. He also never had the kind of guy that can just work without the ball in the same way as Randall was. There will be actions that the Knicks can have that can be very completely different. They can use him as a hub in the same way they did with Hartenstein, except the defense will have to guard Cat around the perimeter. So there are ways that this can just make the offense seem so much better. The pick and rolls with Brunson is going to be a lot more effective. Even if it's Brunson attacking himself, he has never had a stretch big that pulls the rim protector out of it. That could see an increase in Brunson's rim frequency and his finishing, because that has been an issue for him. So there are so many positives that Cat brings over Randall. But then there are still so many concerns, even on the offensive end, particularly with the offensive rebounding. The Wolves percentiles in offensive rebounding with Towns on was 27th percentile, 30th. That was 73rd and 72nd 2 years before trading for Rudy. That still would have been a lower percentage than what the Knicks were doing with Hartenstein and Robinson. Some of the percentiles with Hartenstein on were 87, 85th. They rebounded over 30% of their misses, compared to Towns were around 25, 24%. With Robinson, it was 99th percentile, 93rd, 89th, and 98th. The offensive rebounding for the Knicks was huge, so I wonder to see how they will either look to prioritize that again with Towns. Can they go to those levels with Towns as the big, or will they have to adapt elsewhere on offense to still have that kind of impact offensively? Because their offensive rebounding was needed for them. Then there's a whole point of screening as well. He brings a different dynamic than what Isaiah Hartenstein was giving him. So I wonder how that pick and roll with Towns as a big will work as a whole. Then there's the question of whether it's using him as a 5 or it's whether using him as a 4. Because that again complicates things. That changes how the team should run on both ends of the floor. Again, just so many questions for the Knicks right now. One thing that would say is a bit of a downside with not having Randall over Towns, it's Randall gave them more self-creation. He is an all-NBA talent. He is a better, I think he is a better scorer and a better passer when it comes to just running the offense through him, being a floor raiser, turning bad teams into better teams. I think he does that a lot better than Cat, especially when it comes to his driving ability, just his passing on the go. And I'm not sure if Towns can replicate that, because that was one of the flaws with the Wolves. If Cat was able to just take off the offensive load off the star guard, they wouldn't have to trade Cat in the first place, because they would have had that exact role for him with the Wolves, and that we already saw the issues with that. But the offensive side isn't the only question, and it's not even the biggest question. It's the defensive side. And I already had those concerns before he came. I didn't think that Mitchell Robinson-led defense was going to do anything. Even with Randall at a 5, I didn't think that was going to be good. Even with Bridges and OG Anunoby covering things up with Josh Hart, I still think having a big hole as the 5 that is not a good rim protector, that's going to cause a lot more issues. So what even is a defense anchored by Cat? We saw that before they traded for Rudy, the Wolves were bad defensively. That's why they had to get Rudy in the first place. It's one thing to cover up a small guard with so many wings than it is to cover up a big one that is not good at the big stuff. And I wouldn't even say Cat is a smart defender either. Like the rim protection is in there, the IQ is in there, and even in the perfect situation with Rudy Gobert, with Anthony Edwards, with Jaden McDaniels, the defense was 119 with Towns and no Gobert on, so there are still so many questions with the defense, and I'm having a hard time convincing myself that the defense is going to be good. That's why, combined with everything else and losing Hartenstein, I'm not sure if this was the right move for them. I'm not sure if it's going to end up being a better thing, but I'm not sure if they're going to be in a better place than they would have been with Randall. Moving on from Cat, because they still have so many other moves and still so many questions elsewhere, because they already had a big move for a big kind of relative guy in Mikal Bridges. did they even overpay for him? Because all of those picks are for a non-All-Star. All of those picks are for a guy that he has shown he doesn't have that potential to be the guy on the team, and that's kind of the package that you send out for either a guy that is that guy or has the potential to be. We saw Mikal being overtaxed in a role, that's why he will be better in this role. But then that's still overpaying for someone of his caliber. But is it going to be worth the price? The goal for him is to slide down into a similar role he had with the Suns. It's being a spot-up guy, it's playing more off-ball, being smart with the cutting, screening, and just the connective passing. And it's more importantly, it's him being back in a role where he can exert more energy on the defensive end. And that's the first thing that stood out in his time. The first thing that stood out in his time in Brooklyn was also the increase in his 3-point volume. That could make a lot of a difference in a team like the Knicks. He shot 37% on over 10 threes per 100 possession. Before that, the highest was 6.6 in 2021. So that's going to be a significant difference in turning himself into a volume shooter instead of a good on a low volume. So he's going to add plenty of the catch, and he shot 38% on over 5 catch and shoot threes. But on top of that, with the increased volume, with the defense paying more attention to him, being in a lesser role, surrounded by players who can create for him, he now can go back to just being closeout, being effective off ball. That's why in Phoenix, where he was in a similar role, he shot 72% at the rim. But the bonus of him being with the Knicks now in this lesser role, as opposed to getting him prior the Brooklyn trade, is now you're also getting the guy that has shown he can be a serviceable guy creating for himself. He did have a 56% true shooting on a tough shot diet, where he was the only offensive weapon on nets that just warranted attention. He still had a 0.245 free throw rate. It's not good enough to be a number one option on the Brooklyn team, but it could be a good enough option to be second, third, fourth option on the Knicks team. All the skills that he has when it comes to just being able to take tough shots, go to that pull up and handle the ball in bursts, all of those will be pluses for the Knicks. Then there's the defensive side, of course, where with as much as defensive concerns that they have around Towns and Brunson, he's going to be the guy that just covers everything up. He's the guy that will have the toughest matchups. He can guard your Currys, your Shays, your Edwards. These are all the star guards that he will just take on a nightly basis. So I don't think there will be any question with fit or concerns when it comes to Bridges. It's just a matter of, did they overpay for him? But it might not matter if he ends up having a similar transition as like Drew Holiday had, where he wasn't a overtaxed role with the Bucks, but in a perfect role situated for him, he would have the highest impact. So if Bridges can have that kind of leap impact-wise as Drew, it might not even matter that they send 5 picks for him. And then joining him on a defensive end that will have a lot of responsibility of cleaning everything up is Anunoby. And he already had his impact felt when he first got to the Knicks. It was a small samples, but I don't think that was just a fluke. I do expect this similar trend going forward. His job now is going to be even more important. That's why his health is also going to be important. And I'm not sure if I'm positive about that, especially with how he already dealt with injuries with the Knicks, how he dealt with injuries in the playoffs. And I don't know what they would do if he doesn't remain healthy, or if he can't be 100% consistently. Since getting traded, they were plus 22 net in 802 minutes, and they were almost minus 1 net without him. In the 27 games he missed, they were 13-4 with a plus 2 net. So he already had that impact felt on both ends of the floor. And with Anunoby and Robinson and even Cat already having health issues, this can get scary very quickly, where just health makes them a non-contender, especially with all those players being needed defensively. Now I also question and wonder if Anunoby and Bridges are good enough as wing defenders to cover up for Towns. Because with the Wolves, they had Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, and Ant to cover up for him to have him in a better position to be more impactful defensively. I'm not sure if Hart, Bridges, and Anunoby are that kind of players. Because again, it's tougher to cover up a big than it is a guard or even a wing. It's right now OG Anunoby is going to have to take a lot of defensive responsibilities. He's likely going to guard up a lot more than ever. With Towns as the big, his role will likely be just a rim-side rim protector. So again, he's going to have to prove that he's worth all of that extension. And it could work, but a lot just hinges on Cat's defense. Even if OG plays the perfect role, I still think it might not be enough to cover everything up. But then there's also a worry offensively when it comes to Brunson, because we've seen it this year already. Brunson was covering a lot. He himself took another leap as a scorer, and he was the whole engine. He made All-NBA second team for the first time in his career and was top 5 in MVP. And when I say he was the engine, he led the league in time of possession. He had the ball in his hands more than Luka Doncic, and some of those numbers are comparable to prime James Harden in Houston. So he already had the ball in his hands a lot. He dribbled the most in the league. He averaged the ball in his hands the most in the league. He was as ball dominant as you could think. So he was responsible already. And now you're not likely giving him much more more creation elsewhere. Because already in the playoffs, when we saw him without Randall, he had 10.0 time of possession. He averaged over 6.5 average per second, and dribbled over 6.5 times per touch. So those were insane levels that borders historic. And I don't think they made life easier for him. He averaged over 30 true shooting attempts in the playoffs. That's likely going to continue, because I don't see Cat being that kind of guy where he just takes on that usage. And I don't see Anunoby do that, because he's not the self-creation guy. And if the other option is just Bridges, then that's going to be a win for the defense. Also, what happens when Brunson goes off the floor? Because that's going to matter a lot. We already saw the Knicks fell off offensively without him. We already saw him take so many shots per game in the playoffs when there was no Randall. That's likely going to stay the same, because I don't see Cat as that guy to have that kind of usage. Definitely don't see OG Anunoby doing that. So then it lies with Mikal Bridges, but we saw he's not really that effective as that guy. So who's going to help Brunson, whether he's on the court or off the court? Who's going to be that guy to just carry the offense? The best bet is Towns, and I do wonder how Tibbs will maximize that. Can they run an offense through him that is more just effective with him, that can just raise the floor a bit without Brunson? But then even Brunson individually, he has taken steps too as a scorer. One of them steps is becoming a better higher volume 3-point shooter. He shot 38% on 2.8 shots, with 16% of his field goal last year, and that jumped to 37% on 4.3, 20% of his shots. That's when it comes to his pull-up jumping. So that's a significant jump, and it's almost doubling the volume. If that continues, then that helps a lot, especially for a guy his size, because there are some concerns. He's a bad rim finisher. He had a sub 60% in these 2 seasons, but I also wonder how much of that will improve with the spacing. Is it as a result of just poor spacing playing with Hartenstein and Robinson? That was a big difference, because the Knicks were at the bottom when it comes to the opponent's rim protector staying the closest to the rim. That will definitely change with Cat, and in turn it could help Brunson a lot. On the other hand, he is also a career 50% shooter within 4 and 14 feet, and that has remained an effective weapon for him. He is a finesse kind of guy with his footwork, and now he's going to get more spacing inside that paint. So it could be another career year for him, especially when it comes to his efficiency, better rim finishing, and I do wonder how the whole duo with him and Cat is going to look like. But right now, this team has gone through so many changes, and that leaves them with so many questions on both ends of the floor. And that's why I'm excited and also scared for this team, because I don't know what way all of this could go. There are so many ways it could go. There are so many positives and so many negatives, and I'm not sure yet how much even better they are on either ends of the floor, despite all of these moves. So some predictions. I see them as a 48 to 53 win team. Their floors are on the 5th seed, where they would be lower on their end if health is an issue. Their ceiling is a top 3 seed. I'm so conflicted with them, because I generally don't know how to feel about their season. 2 of the guys that they traded for have health concerns that can easily derail their season. The potential starting big is another one. If any of them goes down, I don't know how else they can survive. That can apply to so many other teams, but I think they have way too many of those potential derail the whole season type of moves. The offensive load on Brunson is also too big for me, and that can affect how effective he's going to be throughout the season. The Knicks offense was 123 with him on and 108 without him. I'm not sure how much that would improve this year. Maybe that is the case a lot for any other team, but for this team it's going to matter a lot because I don't see another reliable shot creator to go with him. Towns is not that guy to me. It might change. He might prove me wrong, and he might be the biggest difference maker on this team offensively, but it's so unpredictable. And I also do think that the Hartenstein will hurt them a lot more than people realize. I don't, even with the Towns addition, I don't think Towns can replicate what Isaiah Hartenstein does. Neither can what Hartenstein does. I don't think he can replicate what he did, nor what Hartenstein do what Cat did. But what Hartenstein did for them was just as effective, especially on a defensive end. Overall, this is going to be a very interesting season for the Knicks, but right now this might be a lot of unpredictability with them. And right now, I can see them go to the conference finals, or I can see them be a first round exit.